The courtroom was quiet. The judge had just ruled in my favor again. The apartment? Mine. The car? Mine. Her attempts to bleed me dry? Failed. I had one, but she wasn't taking it well. I saw the anger in her eyes as the gavel came down. Her hands were clenched into fists, her face red with rage. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. No, she was furious. Then, as the bailiff stepped forward, she looked right at me and hissed, "I won't leave it like this. You think you've won? Watch your back." The words sent a chill down my spine, not from fear, but from certainty. She wasn't done. She wasn't going to let this go. And if she wanted to play that game, I was more than ready. I went home that night and did what any man in my position should do. I prepared. I installed cameras, hidden, silent, covering every angle of my garage and home. Not because I was paranoid, but because I knew she was coming. This wasn't over. Not for her. So I made sure that when she finally made her move, I'd see it. And more importantly, I'd be ready to end it. A couple of weeks passed. I didn't hear from her, didn't see her. But then, one morning, I checked my security footage. And there she was. Not alone. Her lover, the same guy she cheated on me with, was right there beside her, sneaking into my garage, messing with my car. I watched, my blood boiling, as he worked under the hood. He cut something, loosened a few bolts, then sealed everything back up like nothing had happened. I didn't need a mechanic to tell me what they were doing. They were tampering with my brakes. They wanted me dead, and they thought I wouldn't notice. I could have gone straight to the cops with that footage. I could have taken it to court and let the law handle it. But no, this wasn't about justice. This was war. And if they wanted to play dirty, I was going to bury them. This time, for good. I sat there, watching the footage over and over, every muscle in my body tensed like a loaded spring. My ex and her lover had really gone this far. Not content with just losing the divorce, not satisfied with me walking away with everything. They wanted to make sure I didn't walk away at all. They thought they were smart. Thought they could mess with my brakes, let me take a nice long drive, and wait for the accident to handle the rest. But they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated me. I wasn't going to the cops. I wasn't running to the court, waving a USB full of security footage. No, I was going to play along. I was going to let them think their plan worked. And then, I was going to flip the entire thing back on them. That night, I went to the garage and inspected my car. Sure enough, brake fluid was leaking, the lines had been tampered with, and a few critical bolts had been loosened just enough to fail under pressure. They weren't trying to scare me. They were trying to end me. Fine. I repaired everything, made sure my car was in perfect working order. But I didn't make it obvious. I left a few small signs that something was off, just enough that someone with mechanical knowledge would assume the job was still done. Then, I spread the bait. I let it slip in conversations with a few mutual acquaintances that I was planning to take a long drive the next day. A drive along Ridgeway Pass, a road infamous for steep cliffs, tight turns, and frequent accidents. I made sure word would get back to them. And then, I waited. The next afternoon, I drove up the winding road of Ridgeway Pass, knowing full well they were watching. I didn't see them, but I felt them. Somewhere nearby, my ex and her lover were waiting, expecting to hear the screech of brakes failing, the twist of metal, the silence that followed a fatal drop. But instead, they watched a car go off the cliff. Just not my car. See, her lover had parked his own vehicle not too far from where I was. And while they were focused on me, I took the liberty of rolling his car, quietly, methodically, right over the edge. One small push, one slow roll, and then a beautiful crash as it tumbled down the mountainside, bouncing off the rocks before vanishing into the lake below. By the time they realized what had happened, I was already standing behind them. Looking for someone? They turned, faces pale, eyes wide. I smiled. You really thought you could pull this off? Her lover took a step back, looking at me, then at the cliff. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. My car, he stammered. Yeah, I said casually, glancing down at the empty spot where it used to be. Bad luck, huh? My ex was shaking. She knew. She knew I had flipped their plan back on them. You, she started, but I cut her off. Me? I what? I stepped closer, my voice calm. I survived? I caught you red-handed? Yeah, I did. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. The footage played. Clear as day. Her and her lover sneaking into my garage, messing with my car. The color drained from their faces. You thought you'd get away with it, I said. You thought you'd just watch me die, huh? Her lover was breathing hard, sweating. He looked ready to run. But there was nowhere to go. Not up here. And the best part? The police were already on their way. They heard the sirens before they saw the flashing lights. Her lover froze. My ex? She turned to me, eyes wild. You. Me. I shrugged. I didn't do anything. You did this to yourselves. The police pulled up, stepping out, hands on their holsters. One officer walked toward us, glancing at me. Sir, we got a report of an accident. Someone saw a vehicle go off the cliff. I nodded. Yeah, but the real crime happened before that. I handed him my phone. He watched the footage. Then his eyes snapped up to my ex and her lover. You two need to come with us. Her lover actually whimpered. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. My ex? She lost it. This isn't over, she screamed as they grabbed her arms. You set us up. You. I smiled. No, sweetheart. I leaned in just enough for her to hear. I just played the game better. The officers cuffed them, leading them to the police cars. And as they shoved her lover inside, I saw it. The slow, dawning realization that he had lost. That they had both lost. Again. But something told me this wasn't the end. Not yet. Even after the cops cuffed them, even as they were shoved into the back of the squad cars, my ex still wouldn't shut up. She twisted in the seat, eyes burning with hatred as she yelled at me through the window. You think this is over? I swear. You haven't seen the last of me. I'll ruin you. I'll. The officer slammed the door shut, cutting her off mid-rant. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching her lover slump in the other car, his face pale as a ghost. He wasn't talking. He wasn't screaming. He was thinking, probably realizing, really realizing, just how badly he screwed up. This was the moment it hit him. There was no way out of this. And me? I was just getting started. I could have walked away right then, could have let the law handle it. But I knew my ex. And when she said this isn't over, she meant it. She wasn't the type to accept a loss. She'd find a way to claw back, to twist things, to make herself the victim. So I didn't wait for her to act. I made my next move first. While she and her lover were sitting in holding cells, I went to work. I handed every piece of security footage over to the police. Every frame of them sneaking into my garage. Every second of them tampering with my car. And just for good measure, I pulled the call logs. Turns out, right after she tried to kill me, she had been texting her brother. I got the messages. She wasn't just hoping for my accident. She was celebrating it before it even happened. I handed that over, too. Let her try to weasel out of that one. The court date was set. Attempted murder. Tampering with a vehicle with intent to cause harm. Breaking and entering. Her lover was facing serious time. And he knew it. So he did what all cowards do when the walls close in. He rolled on her. Cut a deal. Testified that it was her idea. That she planned the whole thing. That he was just following orders. And just like that, her one ally, gone. When the trial started, my ex tried everything. She cried. She screamed. She called me a liar, said I set her up, said I was manipulative. But the evidence? That video of her sabotaging my car? The texts where she celebrated my soon-to-be accident? Her own lover turning on her? It crushed her. And when the judge read out the final verdict, when she realized she was going away for years, she finally snapped. She lunged toward me, thrashing against the officers holding her back. "You think this is over?" she screamed, her voice breaking. "I swear to God, I'll find a way to destroy you. I'll." They dragged her away, her screams echoing through the courtroom. I just stood there, calm, watching her go, because I knew the truth. It was over. She just didn't know it yet. I watched them drag her out of the courtroom, her screams fading as the doors slammed shut. It was done. Her lover had already flipped on her, taking a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. He might have dodged the worst of it, but he was still looking at a few years behind bars. But my ex? She wasn't getting a plea deal. Not this time. The judge wasn't in a forgiving mood. She wasn't walking away from this. And yet, even as she was pulled out, even as she lost everything, she still looked at me like she had something left, like she was planning something. I wasn't worried, but I was ready. For the next few weeks, things were quiet. Too quiet. I knew my ex better than anyone. She was stubborn, reckless, and if she said this isn't over, that meant she'd do anything to drag me down with her. So when I got a call from my lawyer, I wasn't surprised. "She's trying to appeal," he said, claiming the evidence was fabricated. I laughed. She had nothing, not a shred of proof. But that wasn't the worst part. "She's also filed a harassment complaint against you," my lawyer continued. "Says you've been stalking her, sending her threats." Now that made me pause. She was in jail. How was she making accusations like that? Then it hit me. Her brother. I checked my security cameras that night. Sure enough, a familiar car had been parked outside my house. Not every night, but often enough to make it very clear what was going on. Her brother was trying to keep her game going for her, probably sending fake threats from burner numbers, trying to make it look like I was the obsessed one, trying to set me up just like she had before. I almost admired the effort. Almost. Instead, I did what I do best. I turned the tables. I didn't confront her brother, didn't call him, didn't warn him. I just let him keep going, kept gathering footage, kept logging every fake message. And when I had enough, I walked right into my lawyer's office and handed everything over. A week later, her brother was arrested. And my ex? She found out the hard way that making false accusations while serving time? Big mistake. Her appeal? Gone. Her sentence? Extended. Her brother? Facing charges of his own now. She had tried to play one last move, and all she did was dig her own grave deeper. I never heard from her again. No more threats. No more games. Just silence. And me? I walked away, free. Not just legally, but completely. She started this war. She tried to ruin me. But in the end, she only destroyed herself. Checkmate. Game over. And this time, she wasn't coming back.